Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Socially Awesome podcast. I have got a guest today this will be the first Thursday in February. We're pre-recording a little bit, and I am breaking the rules here. I have only ever had female entrepreneurs on my show before, but today I'm bringing the first male guest. So we have to give you a round of applause for for being our first male. But I am here. I'm on site at Tint World in Gulfport, Mississippi, with Thaddeus, the owner. And Thaddeus and I have done some jobs when I was in corporate together. He has done some work on my personal vehicles, and he's a dear friend of mine. So I'm very thankful to have you on the show today. And I'm looking at him over here across, even though his camera is not set up. So unfortunately, y'all are only going to get to hear his voice. You're not going to get to see that beard in person. But thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
I have no idea what he's going to say. I don't know if this is going to have to be altered before it actually goes live, because I will tell you he has got a sense of humor. So tell me a little bit about how you got started as an entrepreneur in general. I've heard the history, but I'd like anyone that's listening to hear, you've had a long history of doing jobs and turning that into a $1 million business here. So tell me how that all started.
Well, again, thanks for having me. How it all started was when I was in the military. So I served 11 years in the Army, and I came across a gentleman that was as we call it, a battle buddy, a fellow service member. And he was curious and interested in starting a business, something that he enjoyed, a hobby of his, which was souping up or adding to vehicles. And he had a couple that he had dumped money into. And his problem was he had the facility to do so, but he didn't have the knowledge of the industry as much as he should to really get a business to take off. And he had another friend that ended up ultimately partnering with us that had the mechanical knowledge and know-how to be able to install everything that we could offer. So they were missing one part, which was knowledge of the industry and sales. So they approached me, knew that I was super into the industry. It's something that I have taken up as a hobby since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, building cars with my dad, and had trucks that I had built that were my personally owned vehicles. And they approached me and said, hey, would you be interested in coming in as an equal third partner into this company? And of course, being the crazed individual that I am that goes off and does everything on a whim with zero planning involved, said yes. More so, I looked at it as a personal benefit because I would receive aftermarket parts at cost for my own builds.
Right.
So strictly went into it based off of that. And what it turned into was an awesome opportunity for me to get in touch with these mass distributors and these vendors and these manufacturers, and ultimately the in-state consumer with the customers in our customer base. And I was really good at it.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I got to sit and conversate with these people that were like-minded individuals and get to educate them on different parts that were available in the industry that would accomplish the problem that they were having or create a solution for what they were wanting, ultimately what we all get into business for. And it wasn't work. It was something that I could do while being active duty. And that was our huge client base. Active duty, you get these kids that 18, 19 years old, they live in the barracks for free. They spend all their money on the cars. They have no other bills outside of a cell phone bill or Netflix. And they all get in because they can buy a new Camaro or a Charger. And that's the running joke that everybody joins to get a Charger or a Camaro, because you go onto a base, you park in a barracks parking lot, and that's all you see. And I wanted them to spend their money with me. And so a lot of the industry is map priced, where the price is set by the manufacturer as far as what you can advertise on your website for. And we weren't web-based at the time, so it was a bunch of word of mouth. And that allowed us to sell a step below that MAP pricing, because personal sales, I didn't have to adhere to a MAP policy set by the manufacturers. And it made us competitive. We had full-time jobs, but it also allowed us to take care of our own. You know, these kids weren't going out into town off of an active duty base and being taken advantage of by these local shops that everybody knows, that are predominantly right off of base, right off the installation, that know that they're on a fixed income, what that fixed income entails, and that they have no bills. So they're going to take them for everything that they have within those parameters. And the kids don't know any better, and I hate saying kids, but young men and women don't know any better, and they have money burning a hole in their pocket. So we wanted to be able to ensure that they got the right product, ensure that they were educated on it, ensure that it was a fair price both on installs, and we set up basically a word of mouth marketing based off of that. We actually never went web based. We did have a website that we created, and it just kind of sat stagnant. We had enough business to keep us busy to where we didn't need to add that to our overhead. So that was back in 2011. It evolved for a couple years. About 5 years. And in 2016, I moved down here to the coast. And before I left, I said, hey, take the business and run it. You're not going to buy me out. I've enjoyed my time. I've enjoyed the experiences and knowledge and the at-cost product that I got, or demo units that I had on my personal vehicle, and take it and go. So I moved down here, and I was working out on the Navy base. It's a huge veteran town down here. And there was a gentleman that was talking about a great deal that he received from a local retailer here. And come to find out, the deal that was so great was not. And it upset me. And I started, having just moved, it was within my first 30 days of living here. I too was interested in finding out where these aftermarket parts houses and retailers and stores and shops that I could go to for my own hobby, to continue to feed that within the local area. And come to find out, within my searches, there weren't a whole lot. So I took my anger and I took my research, and I set up a phone call with the Small Business Development Center that we have locally, funded with the SBA. And I said, hey, I need to run down a Mississippi business law. And God love the lady that I talked to, but she spent about 4 hours on the phone with me. And that was on a Monday. So the gym conversation happened on a Sunday. The phone call with the Small Business Development Center happened on a Monday. And I had my EIN, my business license, my retail sales tax permit, etc., all set up by that Friday. And what I did was I created another avenue that we had built with our original company, which was Corn-Fed Performance. It was in Indiana, a bunch of Indiana boys. But I created Veterans Performance and Accessories to cater to the veteran and active duty market. We have multiple bases here. We have a huge training installation within the Air Force that's here. And based on the knowledge that I was receiving from the local veteran and active duty service community, we were seeing the same thing that I was talking about, with places being immediately outside of the installation, taking advantage of these fixed income, junior grade, enlisted personnel that had money burning holes in their pockets and didn't know any better.
Right.
So I wanted to create a solution for that to happen. And then I went one step further. And obviously I can sell a product and I can install a product that I sell. Well, the majority of your process of funding comes into play with installation, and having that professionally backed installation and gaining that warranty for that product. So I wanted to alleviate that burden as well. And I offered two different variations of an installation plan. The first would be, you would pay me an hourly rate and I would just install it for free.
Mm-hmm.
I at the time, being that I had just moved, didn't have a shop that I had access to that was under my name. So the Navy base here has an MWR facility, and the majority of installations do, but they call it a hobby shop, oddly enough. And you can go in and rent out stall space. They have 2-post vehicle lifts. They've got motor rooms. The Air Force installation here actually has a paint booth. I know it was shut down for a while, but they have access to that to where you can rent it on an hourly basis or a daily basis. You have access to a tool room to where you don't have to provide your own tools. If something breaks, they cover it. So I would go in and just rent out that space and then install at an hourly rate whatever product they bought. So I would have the money coming in from the product, obviously, and then the money coming in on the installation, the labor side. But I also had a full-time job working in federal law enforcement. So again, I was able to adjust those rates to really benefit the in-state consumer. Because at the end of the day, I didn't need the money. It was a plain money. It actually went to a fund for my kids. So I never really saw it because I was a government employee and making a decent wage. Beyond that, the other option that I offered within the labor plan was you come in as the in-state consumer. If you have base access, so really my main market that I was targeting, if you have base access, you come in and do the rental for the MWR hobby shop space.
Okay.
You do the tool room rental, and we do the install together, and I don't charge you anything. And that covered multiple avenues of comfort for me because in a lifetime of a military service member, usually a move happens every 3 years, approximately.
Right.
PCS every 3 years. And I wanted that individual to be comfortable enough to where if they, let's say they installed a lift kit, a suspension lift, and they move from Gulfport, Mississippi to California, I'm not going to be able to go out to California and fix their suspension lift kit.
Right.
But I wanted them to have the confidence to go into a shop that they would have some sort of knowledge of what that lift kit was, how it worked, where items would potentially create issues later on down the road, be it a sway bar end link, a shock, or something of the sort within that suspension lift kit, and not be taken.
Right.
So you go into a shop and they tell you, at the end of the day, it's a business. And a lot of these people in the world today don't have automotive maintenance knowledge like they used to have even 10 years ago.
Right.
So they go in and they say, fix my car. And they turn around and say, okay, really this $200 job that would fix the problem that you have, we're going to multiply that. And we're going to put a 10-time multiplier and tell you that you have $2,000 worth of stuff that needs to be done. And you can't tell them otherwise because you don't have that knowledge of what you're going there for.
Right.
So I wanted to create some sort of knowledge base within this individual, within this in-state consumer, to where they felt confident enough to where if they have this sound or they have this noise or whatever the case may be, that they can at least narrow it down to, okay, it's on the right front passenger, the front passenger side. It could be one of these 5 things. If they say anything outside of one of those 5 things, I'm not going to buy it. I'm going to tell them that they need to show me. I'm going to go in there with some sort of educational background of what I have on my personal vehicle. And as soon as you start talking the talk and walking the walk a little bit inside these shops, they understand that you're not the customer that I can get that 10-time multiplier.
Right. Right.
So it levels the playing field a little bit. And again, at the end of the day, I didn't need the money. I was making the money off the product, but I was a lot better off giving up that labor and educating my customer. And the word of mouth exploded.
Right.
To the point that a year and a half into it, I had to make a decision of leaving law enforcement, which was my ultimate life goal, my dream ever since I was born. And I had reached the pinnacle being within the federal government of law enforcement. And that was an extremely hard decision. But at the end of the day, I was working my business while working for the government. And in that line of work, as society has evolved to where we're at now, it was going to get me hurt or somebody else hurt or affect the way that I could 100% affect my job and what I needed to do to be an asset. And as soon as I realized that, beyond the pros and cons and the list put together, that was it for me. So I had scaled the company enough to where I could leave my 9 to 5, I guess, if you will. It was never 9 to 5. But my 9 to 5 and jump knee deep into a full entrepreneurial mindset. And, I had always done it part-time, but here we are. This is your 24/7, 365. There is no more 9 to 5. There is no more 12-hour shifts.
Right.
It's all the time, and it's up to you to provide for a family based on this decision. And so, with having 2 young kids, yes, it allowed me the time to get into coaching baseball for both kids, get into going to school events and watching them grow, which I had never really had an opportunity to do being within the military and within law enforcement. So I had to make it work. I fell in love with being a family man again. So at that point, I had no choice. We had to make it work. I am not a social media guru. I'm terrible at anything audio visual, as we discussed today. I'm struggling to put together a PowerPoint. And I'm 34 years old. Like, I killed it helping my son doing Newton's Law homework last night, which I was ecstatic about.
There you go.
Ratios and stuff. But to have that opportunity, I stepped out last week to go to a funeral, and I didn't have to tell anybody. I didn't have to ask permission. I set my guys up to be competent enough to run my company with me being completely out of pocket. Not one time did I receive even a phone call to say, hey, what about this or what about that?
So tell me how you went from the performance, your performance company to a franchise, because Tint World is a franchise. So what happened there as far as the transition? Was it opportunity that you seized? Was it, a business model that you liked better? What happened there? Because that's something that you've already talked about, scaling. And that's something I talk about a lot. And I've had to learn a lot of lessons in the last 7 months. I've only been full-time 7 months, to where I can't do everything. And if I'm doing it all, it needs to cost more, because I can't pay my team if I'm not scaling and all the things. So you talked about scaling your business, but you didn't talk about changing the whole business model, because franchise is different. So
it is. And there's a lot of misconceptions on the franchising side. And mind you, I have no business degree. I failed out of college.
Doesn't even matter.
I have no business background whatsoever, outside of just immersing myself in something that I enjoy doing.
Right.
And the kicker is, I didn't want to franchise something that I had scaled. I didn't want to go into somebody else's baby when I knew that I could do it alone. And that's everybody looks at me and says, why? When you were making it work, why would you get into paying somebody else to help you?
Right.
And essentially creating a partnership that I had done well with once, but then done well as a sole proprietor. Why would I go and give money away? So, just as I said, I am terrible at social media. I am terrible at marketing.
Right.
I had never done marketing. It was all word of mouth, and we exploded based off of that. I had never had staff. I had never had anybody work with me. And to a certain extent, you're going to be capped on your growth just as one person.
Right. Absolutely.
Could I make it by? Was I doing okay? Obviously, I left a very good federal job for it. But I don't like just making it by. I hate the word mediocrity. I hate it. I hate the word content. I'm never content. Everybody's like, oh my God, how can you not be content? I'm not content. I'm always looking for the next best thing. And so now I look into the next best business model that I can get into. But to digress to what you're asking, my plan initially was to put Veterans Performance in a brick and mortar and to marry it next to a general maintenance franchise. So I originally, when I looked into different options of what I could do, I didn't want to build from the ground up a general maintenance shop. But I had built from the ground up an aftermarket shop that I could marry next to a general maintenance shop. So you go in, you need a brake job. My technicians and my salesmen over there are trained enough to say, hey, look like you could use, you go into a typical one, they're wanting to sell you a friggin' air filter and wiper blades. Every single oil change you go to, I don't care who it is. Well, I'm going to go beyond that. I'm going to say, hey, we can get you, your floor liners are disgusting. Let's get you some WeatherTechs in here. Looks like your tint's messed up. We can get you some tint done. We can get you some car audio, whatever the case may be, and turn it into a true one-stop shop that has my auto mechanics, and then you drive next door. And oh, by the way, take this 10% card over there and vice versa, and just bounce back and forth in between the two, because they both have solutions for two different problems. One is a need market and one is a want market. So I called and reached out to two different franchises that were on the general maintenance side. They were northern-based companies that I was wanting to bring to the south. And one of them I had good conversation with, and then they started moving some people around, and that conversation just kind of ceased. The gentleman that I originally spoke with got moved to a different position. The backfilling didn't contact. It was just, and I don't want that. If I'm trying to give you money, and I don't have communication, what's it going to be like when you're just taking money from me every week when I'm trying to get that communication? And I needed that support. So that was a killer for me right there. And so I moved on to this other one, and I could not get them to call me back for anything. Nothing. Couldn't get them to reach out to me whatsoever. Couldn't get them to answer the phone. And at that point, again, if I'm trying to give you money and I can't get you to communicate with me for even 5 minutes on a discovery call, what is it going to be like when I'm a franchisee and you've already gotten your money and I need support? So I kind of nixed that, and I refocused back into my personal brand on the aftermarket side, and I became a customer of Tint World because I was branding my vehicle, and we do cut vinyl and different graphics and wraps and such. So I came here, I dropped my truck off, we did some cut vinyl down the side to advertise my brand, and I was looking on the website for some sort of information to see what kind of other services were offered. And up pops this franchise banner. Well, I had already known where I was financially and so forth. All the questions they were going to ask, I already knew because I've just done it with two other franchises previously. So I started looking into it. I put in the information to request the FDD and started digging into numbers and metrics. And I had a location that I wanted to go when I was looking at my other option of doing the general maintenance and the aftermarket deal. And when I had a discovery call, the communication was phenomenal. I mean, it was almost instantly when I sent in my request for everything, the FDD arrived, and then the next day I got a phone call with the franchise sales team and the developers, and I had a really good conversation. The communication was phenomenal. I had a great talk. It was very informative and very real. I mean, it was person to person. It wasn't a sales pitch. And I came to pick up my truck from the Tint World here. And I said, hey, I just spoke to the franchise developer there. I'm looking to put one. Now, they did deny me my location because it's 13 miles away. It's very protected. But I just discussed, my plans of going for a discovery day and so forth. And the owner currently at the time, so this was open in 2016. This was in 2018 that these conversations were happening. The owner at the time had said, hey, look, I've ran into some health issues. I've got other businesses that I'm trying to scale. I can't figure out how to set this one up to where I can walk away from it and have it operate as an absentee. And it's taking too much time away from my want to scale my other businesses, which I've had for a lot longer than I've had this. So I don't know what your plans are, but if you want this one, buy this one. So I said, break open the books. Let's talk some numbers, make it work. If it fits, we'll put together a puzzle. But needless to say, it fit. And it was a learning process for me as far as that goes. But here I am submersing myself in a business that needed marketing, that had a big local stronghold, that had a clientele base. But the biggest thing is it had staff.
Right.
And I had never operated anything outside of myself. I had never operated anything that had a website or a Facebook page, or, I had Instagram for my other businesses, but I didn't know any of that. So at that point, the franchise background was more attractive to me because I know this industry probably better than 95% of our other franchisees, but they know the marketing, the freaking social development side of it better than I'll ever know. So yes, I have a leg up, but they also have a leg up. So I have to create some sort of solution for me to where I can close those gaps on what my not strongholds are, my weaknesses. I hate using weakness as a term, but my weaknesses in business and the level of success that I was trying to attain.
Right.
So that was really ultimately what it came down to, was instead of going out and, social media and influencers and stuff really wasn't a thing just a couple years ago. This was prior to TikToks. This was prior to Reels. This was prior to, anything outside of posting a picture and typing some hashtags and having character limitations and so forth. But I needed to have a one-stop shop for one phone call to get in touch with a marketing team, one phone call to get in touch with a financial background team, one phone call to get in touch with, some product experts and so forth, or an operations staff. And that was provided to me from that franchise.
From the franchise,
right. So you really break down your royalties and your fees and stuff like that anymore. That's what I would pay if I went out and got separate entities to fill those gaps. I'm going to be about the same amount invested. Now, here's the flip side. If somebody were to ask me if I'm going to renew a franchise agreement at the end of my initial contract term, my answer is no. Why? Because across 15 years, which is our initial franchise, 12 years or whatever it is, I'd have to look again. But across that initial agreement time frame, I will teach myself or will have connections such as you that I have created across that time frame to where I can keep my dollars locally.
Right.
I can keep my branding locally and really build a business with filling in those gaps. But my personal growth within the business will have closed a lot of those gaps regardless.
Right.
So my self-education, my knowledge within entrepreneurship has grown extensively over the past 4 years beyond what I had in my little part-time word-of-mouth gigs, which was phenomenal. But
well, that's how most people get started. And a lot of my listeners, a lot of people that are in my community, I know most of them are working their businesses right now and still working a job because they don't feel they're at a point where they can leave their job. But I also personally feel like until you leave your job, you're not going to get it to a point that it needs to be either. So because where you focus your time is where you see things bloom, and you have to focus your time at a job when you're at a job. So but that I was curious about why the franchise model, because as you know, I came from a franchise, but I also know that local social media and local marketing is important. Of course, that's what I do. So I was curious as to your thoughts on local social media, because I know Tint World helps with that. But what are your thoughts on social media in general as far as serving your community here?
So the negative, I mean, if you remember back to one of the first times we met, it was all based off of social media. I would have never reached out. It was the Abby Bosarge deal. And I would have never known about it had it not been for social media. It was actually, I learned of it from a local radio host that's a good friend of mine. So there's one kicker locally. That created our working relationship within RPM, on the corporate side, and being that it was an RPM sponsored event. So I'm a huge proponent of maintaining as much local e-commerce or local commerce as possible. So anything that I can outsource or that I have to outsource, which is few and far between, but anything that I have to outsource, I want to do it locally. If I know that somebody can do it locally, or I know that somebody's trying to do a startup and grow their brand or grow their business, I will always give them the first opportunity.
Right.
And so with social media marketing or any sort of marketing, obviously it's very hard for a corporate entity, which a franchisor is a corporate entity, sitting down in Boca Raton, Florida, to be able to market to Gulfport, Mississippi.
Right.
And we can study metrics left and right. We have this AI stuff. We have all these metrics. We have 18 different sites that pull these different metrics and so forth. But at the end of the day, I'm the one seeing the customers face to face. I'm the ones that's discussing with these customers on how they heard about us. Was it a drip email campaign? Was it a Facebook post? What brought you here today?
Right.
What got you to call my phone number and allow me to serve you? And that metric is what matters to me.
Right.
And they're not going to be able to get that 12 hours away. And so that's one big kicker of, okay, yeah, it looked great and is a great provision for going into this, but also one huge factor as to why I wouldn't renew, because yes, I have corporate marketing. If you look at our social media pages, you're going to see all these stock photos, if you will, because I can't make it specific to one area. I can't put a Tint World of Atlanta sign and blast it across 85 different stores, Instagrams and Facebook pages.
You mean them? They can.
The corporate side.
Right. But as a franchisee, you have the right and opportunity to still locally manage your pages.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Which is a benefit to the franchise model, is because you have that assistance in the beginning, either until you choose to market it yourself or you need to market it yourself. And a lot of people wait until their numbers are crunched to incorporate marketing in general. People don't realize it's 90 to 120 to 9 months out. Like you can't wait until you're needing sales to market. But I know that you have an awesome referral business, and a lot of your business is referrals. And the relationships that you built even prior to being a franchisee, I'm sure have played a huge part in this, and being veteran owned and serving veterans. I think I saw a sign outside about, a veteran discount as well. So continuing to honor those veterans is important. So I think a lot of that has played in your local marketing, even if it's not on social media.
It is. And again, like you hit the nail on the head at the beginning. And I kind of want to circle back on the fact of people being scared to take that leap. And it's, God, I see it every day. Scared to take a leap, to leave your 9-to-5 comfort knowledge of having a guaranteed paycheck into a complete world of unknown, even if you have some sort of knowledge base or some sort of business built. Scared to build something recession proof. You have all this political talk and all this economy talk, and hell yeah, it's scary, but at the end of the day, man, I wouldn't have been able to live with myself if I didn't say, all right, let's go.
Right.
And it's been, you hear both sides of it. You hear, oh, I couldn't do it, but it's so shit. If I failed tomorrow, I could get a job 2 days from now.
Yeah.
It's so easy to go back into the corporate world, especially today with, oh, nobody wants to work and
Right.
It's so much easier to go back into a 9-to-5 and make decent money, make a livable wage. And easy enough to where it doesn't make sense to not try.
Right. And I like
crazy
that you had said, your explanation of coming into the franchise model was, that you needed that help, you needed that coaching. And as somebody who offers coaching and consulting, I very often see people not want to spend the money on coaching and consulting. But if you're not willing to invest in yourself, how can you expect anyone else to invest in you? Whether that be SBA trying to get a loan to start a business, or whether that be a customer coming in here to spend 10 grand with you, if you don't have the knowledge to do that. So I like that becoming that franchisee was a way of kind of investing in yourself and getting the help you need for the next 12 to 15 years to build what you started in the beginning, which is pretty cool. So tell me a little bit about, because this is a question I ask everyone. What do you feel is the hardest struggle you've had, or hardest thing you've had to overcome as a franchisee? I know you've had probably quite a few, especially going through, the last 3 years, like everyone in the world. But what has been the hardest piece of entrepreneurship that you've had to overcome? Would you say it's staffing? Is it, is it?
It changes every day.
It changes every day.
But I'm not even going to answer that question yet because there's something that's been killing me. And the biggest thing is, people come into podcasts and they want to learn something. They want to feel empowered.
Well, that was my next question. You're jumping the gun here. My next question would be, what piece of advice do you have to offer anyone out there?
Well, we're gonna go to that.
We're gonna go to both. Okay.
I'm gonna discuss the positive before we get to the trials and tribulations.
All right.
The biggest thing is you keep talking about scared to spend the money, scared to do, and that's one big thing that's holding people back is they see these overheads, they see the X's and O's and the dollar signs, but they don't allow themselves to see a projection. And when I went into the SDA and they're like, yo, you need to give these projections. And I'm like, what is that? Right. I see how much it cost me. Right. Nobody looks at how much it can make me. And so when I really sat down with a projection, and you've got to be real, you've got to be honest with yourself on a projection, because you don't want to over project and get yourself into a false sense of hope. Right. And then you crush yourself when that first year you projected $500,000 and you do 200. Yeah. And that's, there's no bigger mental destruction that you can give yourself than to lie to yourself at the beginning and overshoot your expectation. And we all know that first 36 months is crucial. That first 36 months is make it or break it. And if you can't set yourself up to lose a little bit, and I don't mean, people say, oh, you're gonna, you have to be able to lose money in that first 3 years. I went into it saying, oh my God, I'm going to lose everything. In that first 3 years, like I have to be able to pick up and rebuild everything, literally house, car, the whole 9 yards. But what it's really discussing is being able to lose across the business a couple times, not all the time, a couple times. And it's, do you learn from it? Do you grow from making that mistake? Because I can tell you right now, I've made a ton of mistakes in business, but I've never done the same one twice. And the reason why is if you play with my money, which my two things, don't play with my money and don't play with my family, and in no specific order. But they both directly affect one another. And so essentially it comes down to don't mess with my family. And the first time I lose money on a mistake, I will never do it again, because that is me breaking my own rule. And I'm taking away from opportunities for my family. And so I live and I learn, I move on, and I say, okay, I lost this much. My next deal, I'm going to make twice as much, and I make up for it. And it just drives me to be that much better. And the kicker is that's where your entrepreneurs are set aside from business owners. And, business owner, I compare it to a clerk versus a salesperson. I can clerk all day long. That's your business owner side. Right. I ensure that the lights are kept on, people are employed, and bills are paid. As an entrepreneur, I'm looking to excel. I want to exceed. I want my staff to exceed. I want to know what the next best thing is that can make us grow and not stop. I don't like the mediocrity. I don't like, I'm content at 800,000. No, I want 7 figures. Right. And not only on that 7-figure gross, because I've seen companies fail with multi 7-figure gross numbers, but I want my EBITDA numbers. I want my net to grow. I want to be able to go into the government roles and Lean Six Sigma this stuff over here to where I can trim the fat off and say, all right, how can I maintain selling a great product and a quality service, but where can I cut the corners a little bit to where it's not going to affect the customer experience, to where it's not going to affect the product that I'm producing, it's not going to affect my staff, but it's going to make it better. I'm going to
automation and optimization and
the outsourcing of the marketing, outsourcing of the mentor.
I do know a really good local marketing company. If and when you are ready to,
it's coming.
I have a connection a little bit.
Yeah, that's the X's and O's that people are worried about, and I still.
It's the power of proximity. It's a power of proximity. We don't work together anymore because I left.
I blame you.
But that's okay. But it's all about building those relationships with, which is something you talked about earlier. It's just that referral and that educating your customer all the way in the beginning, educating your customer, and in return, that's going to get you referral and business. And, that's what's really cool is because you know a lot of other entrepreneurs. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's the power of proximity. So I think that's really cool.
For sure. And you can't be scared. You have to be able to have those projections because you have to see the money that you spend, which of course is what we all look at. Everybody looks at a bank account, and 90% of the time, you may get paid twice a month. At most, you're going to get paid 4 times a month. Being in a corporate world, even if you're weekly or bi-weekly, you're going to see 4 positives at most. Whereas on the flip side, you're going to see 4 negatives every day.
Right.
Be it coffee in the morning, daycare expenses, grocery trips, gas. I mean, there's all these negatives. So as human nature has given us, we are bound to these negatives financially. So everybody looks at the cost of business, not the potential return.
Right.
And when you look at adding additional overhead, it's very hard to see beyond that blinder that we have to be able to say, okay, it's going to cost me $1,000, but it's going to make me $5.
Right. It's an investment versus an expense. And while, on your tax return, it might be considered an expense. If you are spending $1,000 to scale to make another $10,000, that's an investment. And you have to have an investment mindset.
It's very true on it. It takes money to make money, but where people get confused is they look at these businesses, they look at these 7-figure businesses, and they say, "Oh, you had to have a bunch of money."
Yeah,
I don't have anything. I was active duty in friggin' federal law enforcement with 2 kids and a wife. Like I didn't have anything.
Right.
I was on a single income. I worked on an ambulance for half my dang life when I was on the reserve side, making $9.50 an hour for 48 hours a week and only paid on 32 hours of that.
Right.
I didn't come into it with anything. My parents worked in a prison. I didn't come for money either, And that's everybody has that misconception of I didn't come for money. I don't have life savings built up.
Right.
I don't have there's so many programs out there. I haven't even taken advantage of the veteran programs out there, but there's so many grants and different things that you have to reach out to people. You have to take that step to say, what can I do for me to get me to that next step? But you have to be able to take that step. You have to take that step.
You have to invest in yourself. And that's what I said earlier, because I had a call with someone on Friday that, was very scared to spend the money, knows she needs to outsource, knows she needs to, and just scared to spend it. And I'm like, okay, well, what is not spending it doing for you? It's not doing anything. It's going to continue to have, you're going to continue to have anxiety. Your business is going to be exactly where it is now, a year from now, if you don't learn to outsource some things. And that's a lot of people are just in that scarce mindset. And I think mindset has to come first before anything. You have to have the entrepreneurial mindset versus the business owner mindset, just like you said. And that's just part of having that vision of what you're going to see, come out of, and you have to be committed to time. Like you said, the first 36 months are important, but even beyond that, you can't, when you stop focusing on it, it doesn't get better. And you have to continue to put effort into it. So.
Well, yeah. It's kind of like anything else that the squeaky wheel gets the oil, but you can't, in anything in life, you can't have a problem and just kind of set it aside or bottle it up and expect it to just go away.
Right.
And to really look at biggest issues or biggest downfalls in entrepreneurship is the fact that it changes every day.
Right.
Now, granted, I came from a military background. I came from a law enforcement background where every day was different. So that's nothing new to me. And I thrive better in that livelihood of not knowing what I'm going to walk into the next day. And a lot of people, and that's where the entrepreneurs are set aside from the employees, is there's people that thrive in that 9 to 5. They want that set schedule. They want that set paycheck. They want to know that bills are coming on this time and don't want any surprises. And shit, if I don't have a surprise every day, then
it gets boring around here.
Crazy, I got to have something, be it good or bad, and I've got to be able to have a reactive mind, and that's really the hardest part, is going into it with an expectation of what's next? What's today? What's tomorrow? And it kills me because every single morning, my kids will ask me, Dad, what do you have on the schedule today? What cars are you doing today? And it always cracks me up, and it forces me to open up my calendar and I look at it and they say, okay, we've got this and this and this, and they just want to hear what kind of cars I have. But I'm in a completely different mindset of, all right, what do I have? What could potentially go wrong? My staff going to show up to work? Do I have to mitigate any issues? What did I have yesterday? Is anything going to happen? And you really have to have a grip on yourself and your personal life and really what your goals are and where your focus is. And that's so hard. It's so hard because there's so many variables that I just listed that are huge. And so to juggle a personal life, to juggle the unknowns, we as human beings are not meant to be okay with unknown things.
Right.
And so to juggle these things and have constant unknowns added in, it's a lot. It's a lot mentally. So you've got to have some sort of set aside. Every morning I get up and I go to the gym. That's my set aside. Don't bother me. Don't call me. Don't send me a text. I'm not going to answer.
Right.
Because that's my set aside. And you have to be okay with that. And a lot of times, for the longest time, I felt so guilty because I was taking time away from working on my business. But at the end of the day, if I didn't work out, if I miss a workout, my business capability for that day is trash.
Yeah.
Absolute trash.
Well, and that's pouring back into yourself so that you can be present when you're here. You can be, rejuvenated when you're here. You can be focused when you're here. So that's definitely something, I'm learning in the process too. Yeah. And I'm eating a lot of my own words, and we're going to end right there because I think that's a whole other podcast episode about all of the I told you so's. But I just want to thank you. And I also want to know, how can people get in touch with you? If they are local and they're listening and they're interested, what's the best way to contact Tint World?
So, of course, any business tactic, the best way to get in contact is come through the door. Check us out. We are, you call in, you're going to get somebody that answers the phone that says we're the Gulf Coast one-stop shop. And that's something I take pride in. We offer everything but paint and body. So anything from mild to wild, your vehicle graphics, full wraps, wheels, tires, lift kits, exhaust, ceramic coatings, tint for your business, tint for your houses. A lot of things that people don't know about that I'd love to be able to educate you on or have my staff educate you on. And the easiest way to do that is to come through the door. But if you can't make it in, then give us a call. It's 228-867-7000. You can look up online. It is a corporate-based website.
I'll make sure we put all of that in the show notes for them too. In the show notes, you'll get his Facebook page, his Instagram page.
We're gonna work on the
website. I hope we are. I hope we are because local business support local business. But I appreciate having you today, and I think we're gonna have to have a part 2, maybe a year from now. See if any of our I want to get updated on the 7-figure hit. So if you hit it before then, let me know. But until then, thank you all so much for listening. Make sure you check the show notes for all of Thaddeus's information. I personally have had a lot of work done here for my vehicle, my husband's vehicle. I think my son's vehicle maybe that was just my other one. I don't know. I've had a couple since we've known each other, and a lot with my previous employer. So I just thank you so much for being a guest.
I just want to, I need another round of applause for being the first male. Not that it's a discriminatory thing, but I look at that as an accomplishment in and of itself.
I am. And I've only had a podcast for a few months, but you are the first male. You're the first male. So thank you so much for joining today. And make sure if you are watching this or listening to this, make sure you know about our podcast giveaway for the month of February. Take a screenshot, post it in your stories, tag us, tag Tint World. And we're giving away $100 in cash. So for every episode you share in your stories, you'll get an entry. For every download, you'll get an entry. And then for every review that you leave, good, bad, or ugly, we'll give you 5 entries into the $100 cash giveaway in the month of February. And you can find out more information about that on all of our social platforms. And until next time, make it simple, make it social, and make it awesome. Bye, guys.